The lessons you learn in life include the fact that not everything can be anticipated, and that unexpected events might take you by surprise. Life can be transformed in an instant. Of those times, that night was a prime example. For a brief international training session, Eddie had departed. While spending the night alone in the house was nothing new for me, something seemed off about this particular occasion. Alone in the living room, I sipped wine as the gentle murmur of music accompanied me. As I sat in the quiet, the soft glow of the candles provided some company. In an effort to feel more at ease, I wore a lightweight nightgown. My goal was to unwind, to take in the peace and quiet, and to feel at least somewhat comfortable in my own company. Evenings like this had become my refuge, my method of facing the isolation that had taken up residence in my life since Charlie's death 8 years earlier. However, the doorbell rang that night, right when I was about to get some quiet time to myself. I saw Felipe standing there as I opened the door. I stood motionless for a second, staring intently at him as I attempted to make sense of his presence. With Eddie's paperwork and computer bag in his hands, he stood before me. He exuded an aura of effortless charisma with his slightly disheveled hair and dark blazer that clung to his broad shoulders. Although Felipe and Eddie had been friends for a long time, I was taken aback by his unexpected appearance at my door.
Felipe, eh?
This hour, what are you doing here? I inquired, my voice betraying my utter surprise. He grinned at me courteously. Greetings, Amy. A joint venture between Eddie and I has been in the works for some time. Since I was done with my contribution and didn't want to keep it, I figured I'd just let it go. My heart pounded for a second. Oh, I see. Sure thing. Sure, I'll let you in. I stepped aside to let him in, explaining that it was late and that I didn't want you standing outside. I couldn't help but think about how silly I must have looked in my nightgown standing there in the dim candlelight as I shut the door behind him. I attempted to ignore the idea, but I noticed that Felipe's gaze remained fixed on me for an instant before he averted his gaze. Felipe surveyed the room, the candles, and the wine as we entered, and a small smile spread across his face. It appears as though I am interjecting. What a homey evening, eh? He spoke with an air of subtle humor. My immediate response was absolutely not, and I swiftly placed my wine glass on the table. Nothing special happened that night. Since Charlie passed away, nights like this have helped. Having said that, I'm delighted you dropped by. Felipe indicated with a nod, his smile softening, that he hadn't had the opportunity to get to know you well. I know we haven't exactly been hanging out recently, have we? Regardless, I've spent a lot of time with Eddie. Your selflessness and support for Eddie have always been an inspiration to me, and I've always wanted to express my gratitude to you. Wow, that's amazing. As he sat down on the couch, I went to get another glass of wine from the kitchen, signaling for him to do the same. His steady composure was palpable as I gave it to him and poured him a glass of wine. His unassuming self-assurance and general demeanor were the defining characteristics of Felipe. It was difficult to ignore his presence. As people began to mingle and enjoy their wine, a change in mood began to take place. A palpable, unsaid energy permeated the atmosphere. I felt my cheeks blush under Felipe's intense stare, which remained on me for an uncomfortable amount of time. It seemed as if he was trying to express himself, but his words got stuck in mid-sentence and it had been a long time since I'd felt these things. He looked at me with interest and warmth in his eyes. Something in me was aroused by it. All that time alone was brought back to me by it. I hadn't felt this kind of bond in a long time. Is this Amy? At last he spoke, his voice kind but firm. Was it lonely to see you like this? You have no idea. For some reason I find it unsettling. You're an incredible woman, and I admire your strength. But I also understand how lonely you must be. This is unfair. His remarks swept over me, and I found myself at a loss for words. As the room shrank around us, I did nothing except stare at him, my breath trapped in my chest. I was totally unprepared for that moment. Because Felipe's eyes were so genuine, I was at a loss for words. Despite my heart pumping like crazy, all I could do was smile. My friend Felipe, I get what you're saying. In the end, I succeeded. My voice is steady and gentle. However, I have made my selection. There are moments when being alone feels like a shield. Felipe cocked his head ever so slightly, his eyes betraying his profound contemplation. Possibly yes. He whispered something about how being alone isn't necessarily a shield. There was an electric charge in the air between us that words couldn't describe. I could feel Felipe's eyes drawing me in, and I knew it wasn't a hallucination. However, should it remain that way? I was both frightened and excited by the intensity of the moment. This was just the beginning of the amazing ride that was this narrative, so be sure to subscribe and enable notifications for more. Your encouragement at the story's conclusion in the form of likes and comments will be priceless. I couldn't get Felipe's warm eyes out of my head that night. The impact of speaking with someone so authentic and honest is difficult to put into words. His remarks regarding isolation, however, lingered with me the longest. How on earth could a powerful and accomplished man like him ever feel lonely? There was a moment when I gave in. "Felipe, why are you by yourself?" I questioned, leaning in close. "To give you an idea of your stature, charisma, and professional accomplishments, you're 37 years old. You have considerable intelligence and maturity. I don't know any woman who would refuse your advances." I looked directly into his eyes as I spoke, anxiously anticipating his response. For an instant, Felipe's countenance became solemn, although a small smile drew at the edge of his mouth. As he hesitated, he cocked his head slightly, as if he were picking his words with care. "Amy, being alone can sometimes seem like a deliberate decision." His voice was as gentle and reflective as ever as he explained that the true problem is merely not meeting the proper person. Perhaps the proper person has always been nearby, but it's been difficult to see, or perhaps I've just been too choosy for a man my age. I was astonished and shaken by his statements. I got what he was getting at, but I was too chicken to tell myself. A slight flush spread over my cheeks, but I forced a smile anyway. "Felipe, I am unsure. To let you leave would be the insane act for any woman who knows you, in my opinion. You shouldn't be on your own." Felipe fixed his intense gaze on me for what seemed like an endless amount of time. "Now what about you, Amy?" Urgently, he inquired. "Tell me why you're by yourself." "Let me inquire. You've been solitary for a long time. In what ways has that been a breeze to select?" His question caught me entirely off guard, so I hesitated. My voice quivered a little as I confided that, at 60 years old, I had found solitude to be a refuge. Following Charlie, I simply cannot see ever again becoming that intimate with another person. And sometimes, though, as our gazes locked unwittingly, my words faded. His eyes were inviting, and I felt an irresistible draw in that direction. There was an almost palpable sense of tension in the air right then. Felipe and a plethora of unresolved issues occupied my thoughts as the night came to a close. I felt crushed under the burden of our past interactions as I laid in bed. Yes, there was shame, but there was also an incontestable thrill. It had been years since I had given in to these emotions. After talking to Felipe, I have to confess that everything changed. As the days went by, that fateful night continued to play in my head. His expression, his look, they seemed to have permanently imprinted themselves on my spirit as they remained. In spite of my best efforts, whenever I got the opportunity to speak to him, those emotions simply intensified. They only became stronger when I had the opportunity to speak with him. While Eddie was at work, I kept on chatting with Felipe. On occasion we sat in his car and had lengthy chats, and on other occasions we had coffee outside. On the phone we conversed for hours. Came easily and effortlessly, as though it were effortless to establish a rapport with him. But there was a sensation that intensified with each meeting. Much more than a simple friendship, this existed. My heart would skip a beat whenever I would hear Felipe's voice or see that recognizable smile on his face. These sentiments were becoming more than a casual acquaintanceship, and I had to face the fact. And the most challenging aspect of it all? Avoiding Eddie's knowledge of the secret. Establishing a rapport with the best buddy of my son. Was I mistaken? Or was it simply that I was being given a second opportunity by life? The memory of our last encounter is still very much with me. As we sipped our coffee and spoke, we sat side by side in his automobile. More than ever before, our bond deepened that day. Near enough for Felipe to fix his eyes on my mouth. My heart was racing and my breath was caught. The distance between us seemed to vanish at that time because of how near we were. However, before we parted ways, we both drew back, allowing the enchantment of that moment to linger in the air. I had no further communication from Felipe following that evening. I was unprepared for the profundity of his message when it arrived at last. The address and a few words were all that were needed, although the significance of them was immense. Tonight at 8, Amy, I want you to come to this address. When you're ready, I'll be around to greet you. I have somewhere I'd want to take you. Something I would prefer to keep to myself. A tempest was gathering within of me as I read those lines. My pulse was pounding so rapidly that I found it difficult to breathe, and my hands were shaking. There was conviction and weight in Felipe's every statement. Our lives took a dramatic change at this moment. A mix of fear and excitement washed over me as I felt a flame ignite inside. I understood his meaning perfectly. This meeting would not be like any other. Shall I proceed? I pondered. However, I had an innate knowledge of the solution. As I got ready for that night, it was as if I were changing identities. A figure-hugging black dress was my attire. It was a daring dress. It fell to a length just above my knees and featured an off-the-shoulder style. An elegant and risk-taking style. It had been quite some time since I had felt this beautiful, I thought to myself as I stood in front of the mirror. After applying minimal makeup, I loosened my hairstyle so it fell loosely over my shoulders. Bold crimson lipstick adorned my lips. Throughout the night, I was convinced Felipe would stare at me intently. Whispering to myself, I attempted to subdue the excitement building within me, telling myself that I was doing this for him. I knew it wasn't for him alone, though in my heart, it was also for me. I yearned for the days of being desired, passionate, and unique. Felipe was waiting in his car when I got to the address. Something in me started to tremble the second our gazes connected. As he sat there, he had one hand comfortably resting on the steering wheel and his sleeves slightly turned up. The look of familiar warmth and resolve was in his eyes. He got out of the vehicle, strolled over to me, and opened the door. He whispered to me, "Come on, Amy," and reached out to grasp my hand. "I have a very important announcement to make to you tonight." I felt my fingers quiver as I grasped his hand. However, I was alleviated by Felipe's soothing touch. I hopped into the car and we silently cruised away. There were only the two of us in the pitch blackness of night. Felipe pulled over 30 minutes after that. He mentioned that we have arrived, his expression slightly filled with anticipation. A stunning panorama stretched out before me. Warm light emanated from a modest dwelling tucked up among the mountains. As Felipe walked me softly toward the home, the night air brushed across my face, a chilly breeze. I was taken aback by what I seen as he opened the door. Here in the house, a masterwork that was. There was not a single imperfection. A blazing fireplace, high ceilings, moonlight spilling through huge windows, and warm wooden accents. I felt like it was tailor-made for me. Artwork in earth tones decorated the walls. Sophisticated pieces of furniture encircled a glass coffee table that stood proudly in the middle. The area was anchored by an elegant dining table. There was an air of deliberate elegance to every detail. "You made this, right?" With tears welling up in my eyes, I inquired. Felix grinned. He acknowledged it, but said that he had never had someone as precious as you to exhibit it to before. I couldn't think of anything to say at that very second. It seemed like my tastes were being catered to everywhere I went. As I surrendered to the spell of the moment, I let go of the burden of my long-suppressed inner struggle. Inviting me to take a seat, Felipe pointed to the sofa in the living area. A magical, enchanted setting with the crackling of the fireplace. A bottle of red wine and 2 glasses of it were in his return. With a little lean toward me, he poured the wine. His voice was strong and profound as he told Amy, "I know I can't keep holding back what I feel." He requested her to come here because of this. His eyes met me. It was Felipe. I tried to whisper, but he cut me off. "No, I must express this. The home in question. This spot. This evening. I felt compelled to tell you about it. You are the one. You have enchanted me like no other." I was struggling to catch my breath due to my racing heart. The walls I had constructed inside crumbled under the weight of Felipe's remarks. While he sipped his wine, he went on to say, "You know, Amy," referring to the experience of being alone with you. "Every day it drew me further to you, and now I realize I can't escape it." There was a zenith of tension between us at that very time. The look in Felipe's eyes said it all. Disguise was no longer an option. He drew nearer to my mouth and I found it difficult to breathe. At long last the time had arrived. I retreated just a little bit just as our lips were going to touch. I whispered to Felipe, "We need to be sure before we do this." My voice quivered. Felipe, though, remained steadfast. "Absolutely, Amy. This point, I am certain." I had a certainty, nevertheless, over the outcome of this evening. One of the most memorable times of my life was going to happen this night. Everything changed in an instant as Felipe's lips finally contacted mine. An intense emotion I hadn't experienced in a long time suddenly broke forth, like a fireworks display in the depths of my being. His kiss was passionate, and I yearned to be held by him at that very moment. His hold on my waist was strong and passionate, and my hands encircled his neck as he drew me nearer. At that intense, passionate moment, all else faded into the background. He whispered to me, "Amy," his lips moving down my neck as he spoke, "You're stunningly gorgeous. How could I have failed to notice how mesmerizing you are?" His voice resounded with love and passion. My already overpowering feelings were further heightened by his comments. With my heart pounding and my breath trembling, I leaned toward his ear. "Felipe, I must say you look very dashing. I appreciate it. I appreciate you bringing out these emotions in me." The sincerity in my remarks quivered. The intensity and thrill of the moment had me totally submerged. The red wine poured from the glass splattered all over the table as it fell to the floor. That was irrelevant to us, though. Everything came to a halt at that same second. Our little group. As comparison to the intensity of our connection, the wine was insignificant. The warmth of Felipe's touch against my skin washed over me as he took my dress off my shoulders. Gradually, my clothing tumbled to the floor, exposing my naked body to him. As I nervously undid each button on his shirt, I grabbed for it. I was in awe of his strong chest and broad shoulders as I slipped it off and flung it to the floor. A whisper of "You're incredible" escaped my lips. I beheld him intently. I was totally taken aback by his charming and inviting smile. There was no turning back once we reached the bedroom. Felipe leaned over me as my naked body rested on the bed. His eyes betrayed a combination of adoration and passion as he studied me intently. Before his lips returned to mine, he delicately ran his fingertips down my cheek. His passionate kisses were wonderfully gentle. I pulled Felipe closer to me by encircling his neck as he dipped his head toward mine. I felt entwined with him with every touch and motion. Ami. His voice was barely audible as he whispered, "Accompanying you. There are no words to describe it. Still, I'm sure this will be a memory I'll never forget." In that split second, everything changed. All over my body, Felipe's warmth washed over me. Some tremendous force was at work within me. Gripping the sheets fiercely, I let out a sound that was louder than I had anticipated. We were both gasping for air since Felipe had stopped complimenting and was fixated on his actions. I lost track of the number of times my body stiffened up and shook. This level of intensity and overwhelm hadn't hit me in a long time. How many times did I stab Felipe in the back with my nails? I can't remember. I began to make more noise as I knew we were in the mountain cabin, far from anyone's ears. Plus, I was quite forthright. Felipe heard me. I wish I could soak up every last bit of the comforting heat that's radiating from within. He nodded and then released himself, his face red and his breath coming out in gasps. I was utterly spent and drained after what I had just gone through. I could hardly move. Still, every detail was just right. Felipe curled up beside me, his arm resting softly on my shoulder. We gazed up at the ceiling as if to take a deep breath. Our mutual lack of speech conveyed our innermost feelings. After a long inhalation, he pivoted to confront me. "The next step is what?" His voice was gentle but worried as he inquired. "How shall we inform Eddie? Will this remain a secret between us indefinitely?" His face betrayed a range of emotions, from dread to a flicker of optimism, as I directed my eyes towards him. A small smile spread across my face as I delicately traced his face with my fingers. "Felipe, come here." A subtle resolve crept into my voice as I said, "For the rest of the night, I would rather not dwell on the future. Being here with you is what I desire." I grabbed my phone and sent a message to Eddie right then. "I'll be spending the night at a friend's house. I am not a cause for concern." A mixture of serenity and anticipation swept over me as I pressed the submit button. Everything we had shared that night became real to us. However, there were unanswered questions and uncertainties that awaited the following morning. I sensed that this narrative was far from ending. Such a thing is impossible. As of right now, though, we've chosen to keep mum about any and all future concerns. Keep an eye out for more updates. Reason being, this is just the beginning. This is just the start. I can tell this narrative has had a profound effect on you because you've come this far. You won't want to miss a single word of what I have to say. Please consider following this story, enabling notifications, and leaving a comment.